Thank you, Devar.
Thanks.
It's a real pleasure to be here. I assume everybody can hear me. I'm not going to stand back there, and I'm going to kind of go back and forth to my computer to show you stuff. First, it's really, I just have to say, an honor and a privilege to be here. I was just saying to Mark, it must be great to work at a place like NPR and have the kind of public standing and cachet and excitement around the work that you do. So I'm a loyal listener, though my favorite show comes out of WNYC called Radio Lab, so I don't know what to tell you about that. But from New York. And I've been running the Personal Democracy Forum with my partner Andrew Roche for 6 years. It's the world's largest conference on how technology is changing politics. And that's how I met Devar. She came and spoke. Well, she attended 1 year, and then last June we had Devar and Scott Simon both did panels. And we've always had an interest in how media is changing, how technology is also changing media, especially as it covers politics. And when Devar originally asked me to speak, we had talked about doing something about the web and politics, and I said, you know what, I'd rather come talk with you and share some ideas that I've been germinating in my head for a while now about the potential of the World Wide Web. And that rather than just sort of repeat things that I've said before, that this would be a little bit of a challenge for me to synthesize some ideas and offer them in a new way. So we decided to call the talk Navigating the World Wide Web. And I'm going to bring it around to talk about politics and then ultimately share some thoughts and hopefully have a discussion of brainstorm some things that maybe NPR could do or Weekend Edition could do with its community of listeners. Also, I have to say thank you for letting me in on your secret. Now I know what NPR does when all the stations are having their fund drives. This is good to know. The first thing I want to do is explain what you're looking at. Okay, so this is a screensaver called Electric Sheep. And I put it up here for a reason, because it's a metaphor for what we're going to talk about today. Because this is not a standard screensaver. This was made by an artist named Scott Draves. You can download it onto your computer, and it runs in the background when your computer wants to go to sleep. But it's a distributed screensaver. What that means is it's actually running on about 60,000 different computers around the world. And as it runs, people can vote on whether the image that they're seeing is one that they think is beautiful or not. And by voting, you do a little plus on your computer, you like what you see. The server learns from the opinions of the people looking at the image in real time and makes the image better. Or if you really don't like it, you can, sort of vote it down. Whoops. All right. Well, I unfortunately got rid of the screensaver. But the idea of that, of a community, a dispersed community of people connecting in real time to create something meaningful, beautiful in this case, is something I want to come back to, because I think that's where the potential of the real-time web, not just people randomly sharing, but people deliberately sharing with each other, where that potential can take us. Now I'm going to be just showing you live web pages, so I apologize as I run back and forth to click. This is just a neat little counter that somebody made that shows roughly how the live web is moving. And by the live web, what I mean is there's a lot of the World Wide Web that's just static web pages. The homepage for a university, or a library, or your personal homepage, whatever it may be. They don't change that often. Then there are pages that people update and change frequently. Blogs, news sites, social network pages where you update your status, Twitter, these are all examples of real-time, dynamic changing websites. And so people who are interested in understanding and maybe doing things with that part of the web have come to refer to it as the World Wide Web, or just the live web for short. And you can just see, if this is true, according to Gary Hayes' research into the general numbers, for example, in just the 20 minutes since I started this thing running, there have been 11,000 more blog posts posted onto the web by people. Some number over 1 million YouTube videos watched, so on and so forth. So the web is becoming a mirror or a barometer of human activity. It's not a perfect mirror. I don't know that anything could be. It's definitely more representative of the people who use it than the people who don't use it. So let's put all those biases to the side and admit that we are still facing something completely new. And if we're in the business of journalism, which I consider myself to be in too, the potential for information gathering and sifting and making meaning in some new ways is, I think, at a new stage. Now, for me, this realization all started with blogs, and about, 6 years ago, my smarter little brother David called me up one weekend and said, you got to see this new thing I just put together. It'll let you see what other people are saying about you on blogs. And he called it Technorati. I remember discussing with him whether that was a good name or not, and we stuck with it. And he actually built it into a company which goes on. So full disclosure, that's my brother's company. But the thing that interested me about Technorati is it was the first real-time search engine, or close to real-time, because blogs, as they update, automatically send a message to central databases. This is built into blogging software so that those central databases would know, this blog has just updated itself, and it was through that little piece of knowledge that you could go find those blogs, scrape the content on them, and then begin to make meaning of them. And one of the first things that David did that astounded everyone when he did it was show people what books bloggers are talking about now. And it partly worked with Amazon and how Amazon makes books available on the web. And he could build you a top 10 list of the books that bloggers are most talking about. And I said, wow, that's really cool. Why don't we look at what sort of political links bloggers are talking about? And he was able to create a news page. But then the next thing he did for me, and it's not something that Technorati ever went out and displayed, is I said to him, there are different kinds of bloggers out there. There are bloggers who, like me, I grew up on the political left. I actually worked at The Nation magazine for a long time. There are bloggers like me who read progressive news, and there are others who think the National Review is the Bible. What if we could create a subset and just look at the 1,000 bloggers who have a permanent link to The Nation on their homepage, and 1,000 bloggers who have a permanent link to National Review, and find out what they're talking about? And he ran the numbers, and we discovered something really interesting. And this was in the build-up to the second Iraq War, I guess. And it turns out that National Review-friendly bloggers were linking to the Washington Times. They were linking to Rush Limbaugh's website. And I forget, there was one other right-wing source of, maybe it was Fox News. And the left-leaning bloggers were linking to things like The Guardian. They were BBC, NPR. It was like two very interesting different filters on the world. And I thought, well, there's gold in these hills. There's lots of interesting knowledge to be tapped simply by looking at people's, what you might call data exhaust. Okay, they're not doing this consciously. They're not saying, let's build a list. They're just following their own passions. But with a little bit of deliberate filtering, we can begin to learn things about what those passions maybe tell us. Now, oh, Electric Sheep are back. By the way, it's called Electric Sheep because Philip K. Dick's quote, "Do androids dream of electric sheep?" So this is the collective dream of all these computers. Okay, so the next step for us at PDF, at the beginning of the presidential campaign cycle in 2007, we had this realization that the internet was going to be a much bigger factor in the election than it had been in 2004. It would be where the campaigns played out. It would be a source of new kinds of energy for the campaigns. It would be disruptive to the process. And that voter-generated activity, voter-generated content, could be the wild card in affecting the normal balance. And so one of the things we thought about is how can we show what that voter-generated activity is? Where is the intensity among online political activists? Again, they're not a perfectly representative group for the entire country, but I would estimate there are probably somewhere around 10 to 15 million people who every day or pretty often pay attention and participate in the process. They aren't just news consumers, they're news creators and sharers. And these people, studies have shown, really do play a much larger role in real life civic activity. They're the ones who write letters to the editor and give money to candidates and go to rallies and organize house parties and so on. So it actually makes sense, I think, to look at what the online activists are doing with that little proviso thrown in. They're not perfectly representative of ordinary people. They're intensely engaged. So the first thing we did is create a track to see how the presidential candidates running were being mentioned by blogs. And on a daily basis, this is a chart which I don't know how well you can see it, but you can see, Obama is in blue. Here's Sarah Palin in the bright green when she was announced. And you can begin to distill interesting data. During the election, one of the things we saw is that the number of mentions overall of the Democratic field versus the Republican field was overall about 2 to 1 in favor of Democrats. Now, I don't mean pro-Democrat, I just mean discussion of them, mentions of them on blogs in English. And what that told me was there was just more generic public interest in the Democratic field than in the Republican field. Interest, intensity, and it certainly showed in terms of the size of the rallies and the kind of involvement that occurred in 2008. So I think it was a good early measure. We then did the same thing with Facebook friends. We did it with MySpace. This is just sort of fun because we've actually continued charting Facebook friends since Election Day. The blue is Obama. Obviously, he's head and shoulders above everyone else with more than 6.6 million friends. But we can take Obama out. And now we're mostly looking at the Republican 2012 hypothetical Republican field. And the green is Sarah Palin. I think the first jump, I forget when she announced she was quitting politics, but one of them is when she announced she was quitting politics, and the other one is when she went after Obama over the death panels. Both times she got a boost in friends on Facebook. I'll let you make of that whatever you want. Here's another interesting thing you can do. You can take out some of the people who ran the last time. I'm now taking out Mitt Romney, Bobby Jindal. Now we're looking at Tim Pawlenty, Mark Sanford. Well, he's had a decline for obvious reasons. But look at this, Tim Pawlenty. He's one of these dark horse, who knows, candidates. And he recently hired a very good team of Republican online strategists. And I find it really interesting. He's way down here at 7,000, but he's climbing. Something's going on in the Republican base for Tim Pawlenty. That's a hint.
Mindy Finn.
Yeah, Mindy Finn and
team.
Patrick Ruffini, and he's definitely hired a pretty smart group. other ways that we can study the data exhaust that users of the web share by accident in real time to tell us about things that are going on that we may not know. A site that I'm a big fan of, and Open Congress, full disclosure. I do a lot of consulting for the Sunlight Foundation, which is been funding and helping build Open Congress from its origins about 3 years ago. Sunlight is focused on using the power of the internet and data to shine more light on what's going on inside Washington. And Open Congress is supposed to be the sort of user-friendly version of Thomas, okay? And I don't know how many of you have used Thomas. It's hard. You can't link to bills. There are all kinds of bad things about Thomas. Open Congress scrapes all that data or takes the government feed, the official feed, and then transforms it in many usable ways. But one of the nicest things that it does, if you look on the right-hand side of it, is that this box right on the home page gives you a window into what the users of the site are most interested in this case, the last 7 days. Now, Open Congress is now getting about 1 million unique visitors a month, so it's up there in terms of really getting a decent level of usage. I wouldn't call it fully representative. There are certain issues that online political, let's say, organized minorities are passionate about, like gun owners. You'll always see a big blip for anything having to do with gun issues on these kinds of interactive sites. But I find it fascinating to see that the #1 most viewed bill in Open Congress this past week is not health care, it's unemployment compensation. And last year, when we looked at the statistics for the site for the whole year, not only was unemployment compensation the #1 most viewed bill, it was the #1 most commented bill, with something like 56,000 comments. What is going on around unemployment? Well, I mean, there are a lot of things going on. I think, obviously, people, there are more of them, sadly, and they have time on their hands. And they go to the web to look for help. And because Open Congress is designed to win in search, this is one of those little secret sauce type things that the web people here know about, it gets a lot of people who are just Googling unemployment compensation or unemployment extension, because that's what the issue is. Can I get my benefits extended another 13 weeks? And those people are going to hit the Open Congress bill page somewhere in one of those top 4 or 5 search results in Google, and they go there, and the next thing they know, they can comment. Some of them actually think they're commenting on the official bill, but what's actually developed there is a community of people who are helping each other figure out how to get unemployment extended. That's a little bit of a tangent away from the World Wide Web point, but I just bring it to you because there's really interesting things when you enable a community to interact around a common interest like this, and that's a subject I want to sort of plant in the back of your mind for, like, when we get back around to what does this mean for NPR. Okay, so why do I have a Google page up here? Oh, okay. So it isn't just the data exhaust that people leave behind when they do the sorts of things that we've been talking about, like friending. There's also the data they leave behind directly from search. This is, Google is a great source for this, and I'm not really just talking about the odd things that you can discover about the public psyche. So if you type the words "can Google," Google offers you possible ways to complete that sentence based on how many people are typing the same phrase. So for some reason, "can Google hear me" is the #1 thing that people type. And so that actually raises the question, which is, just for comic relief, I can't resist showing you, is Google making us dumber? And I'm sorry, because some of this may not be safe for work, but What's an example? Let's see. There's lots of really bad stuff here today. Well, anyway, it's a dog ate a condom. Well, I don't know why that's the #1 response. Okay, anyway, that's not why I took you to Google. The question is not whether Google can make us dumber, it's whether Google can make us smarter, all right? And so I think one of the most interesting places to be looking at Google is to be looking for what is trending in search. Google actually has this section of their site called Google Trends. You can subscribe to an RSS feed that updates every hour with the top 50 list of the things that people are searching on. And most of the time it's pop culture. It's checking whether Kanye West died, which I guess was the top thing today. Yep. He didn't die, right?
Nope, he's fine.
Okay, good. But that's not why Google is interested, and we're all interested in watching search trends. It's because actually sometimes this information is really predictive. So there's Google flu trends, which maybe some of you have heard of. Apparently, people searching for information on some common words that have to do with the flu are a good predictor of places where the flu is cropping up. In fact, it's 2 weeks ahead of the CDC data.
Wow.
And so here's a really scary image. This is the current search pattern for this year. You see this dark blue line, right? And this is the track for past years for searches on the word flu, or on the whole set of words that Google uses. That really scares me. I hope it just means that people are more scared about the flu than they're all getting it. But and just so you can see how this really works. So this is Google's time track. And I think the blue line is the Google flu trends search. And they're giving us the dates. We're in winter of '08. And the orange line is the CDC actual track for the data, right? And so Google spots the increase, the published CDC reports, which are 2 weeks behind, but watch what happens.
Wow.
So, like I said, there's gold in those hills. This is on Google's website, by the way. You can find it easily. And I will send, Devar, I'll send you all my links. Okay, so I think we're done looking at sort of the slower part of the live web. And now we're going to look at the part that's like constantly alive, which is obviously we have to go look at Twitter. So the first site I'm taking you to is called TwitScoop. And what they do is that they are taking the stream of tweets, and Andy, you may know the answer to this. I believe what they're doing is that there are very, very few sites or companies that Twitter actually gives the full feed to. And instead what they do is they give these people a representative sample. A really big one, but it's not all billion tweets a day or whatever the crazy number is. Is that?
I think that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
They can try to tap directly into Twitter's API, but it'll be a flood. It'll overwhelm them.
I think there are a few developers who are actually given privileged access to get the pipe, and everybody else is getting a section of it that Twitter says is representative. So we have to trust them that indeed it is representative. Everybody's building these free tools on top of being able to get 100,000 tweets an hour or whatever the number is. And so what they do is they take every word and they are just parsing for popular words. And on the right, they're showing you what those words are now. I guess we're all talking about baseball. Is there a game today?
Yes,
obviously. But it's interesting because it's there isn't a game right now, so I'm a little surprised. But hey, it's lunchtime.
Yeah, it's lunchtime, so people are talking about
People are just talking about sports.
Yeah.
The Yankees are up 3-1 in the series.
Yes.
and notice that Kanye is pretty much cleared out at this point.
I don't see Kanye on there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to show you some interesting ways to sort of dive into this arena. TwitScoop is kind of fun overall, and by the way, you can mouse over any of these, and they'll show you what are the last few tweets with that actual word in it. So you can get a very quick, at-a-glance view. Why is this thing buzzing now? But a site that I like a lot, which is called Trendistic, which allows you to put any word or any set of word combinations in and see what the sort of ups and downs in terms of the percentage of tweets at any given time are using that word. So this is Obama's track for the last 7 days. But watch what happens when we sort of pull back to the last 90 days. This big spike over here, what is that?
Peace Prize.
Nobel Peace Prize, okay? More than 5%, 6%, I think, at its peak. What do you think this is right here, this other peak?
Healthcare speech.
Healthcare speech, exactly. What's nice about doing this and playing with this is that you get validation. You know it's reflecting something real. And again, some nice tools on the right-hand sidebar. They'll show you what terms are trending now. They'll show you when they started, how long they've been going in hours. And another nice thing about this site for people who really want to do research is it's very easy to dig into their archive. So if you want to go back to a particular day and see, well, what else was hot the day that Obama was hot?
Click on
Right.
R.I.P. Kanye West.
Where's that?
Right there. There you go.
Right. So today, Kanye was the victim of this thing that the internet does of spoofing people
It was a
about celebrities
4chan prank.
dying. So Trendistic is fun
Micah?
and a good tool. Yes, a question.
Just came across this yesterday. Do you happen to know about the comparison in this?
Yeah, you can put other terms in if you
Like
want, right?
NPR, BBC, you can see.
Oh, do you really want to know? So, oh, sorry, I forgot to put in the comma. Okay, so the BBC is the blue line, and NPR is the red line. They have a lot more funding than you. Don't feel bad. Okay.
And London is also the center of the Twitter universe in many ways. It has more per capita Twitter users than any other.
London
city.
may be. That's true. That's true. Now here's one more fun site.
Twitter also has a bigger international audience than most of the other.
Except Facebook. Except Facebook.
Okay, so this is one that I've been looking at a lot lately called Trends Map. And what they're trying to do here is actually take the fact that a lot of people on Twitter give their address, or at least name a city or something where they're from, and so you can begin to see terms that are trending higher by location. And you can zoom in and out on this. It's not a perfect tool. It may freeze your browser, especially if you don't have a lot of extra RAM. A lot of these types of sites can be ornery that way. So just keep that in mind. But Trends Map is at the moment not all that interesting, but you know, it is fun to see when a term spreads or why something maybe is particularly local. And I think this is also a site to keep an eye on.
What happens when you click on one of those?
I think what we'll get is a box, and it's giving you, you know, that's Kanye, and he's being talked about a lot in Toronto, and these are the recent tweets from the Toronto area with Kanye in them. So you can dig it, you know, they're smart. They're giving you an ability to dive deeper if you want. So now I want to just sort of finish with two examples of sort of real-time what this all means when you put it together. I guess about a week ago, there was this scandal in England where the Guardian was enjoined by the British courts from reporting on a question that a member of Parliament was asking. And they couldn't do anything. It was like one of these legal injunctions where the only thing they could say was, we're not being allowed to tell you anything, except a PR firm named Carter Ruck is gotten the injunction against us. And it's a big deal in England to say that a newspaper can't report what's going on in Parliament. Apparently that's like a very special tradition there, that newspapers have always been able to report on anything going on inside of Parliament. And Parliament is this kind of, got its own sort of free speech zone inside it, which is, you're immune from libel, I think, if you say something in Parliament. So there's a little more free speech there. But suddenly, people are like, what? How can The Guardian, one of our best papers, not be able to report something? And the internet loves nothing more than a scavenger hunt. There's this old saying that the internet responds to censorship as damage and just routes around it. And so people went searching quickly to figure, well, Carter Ruck, what could it have to do with anything else? And they discovered a document that I think was sitting on either Wikipedia or WikiLeaks, which is a site where people dump all kinds of interesting documents, that Carter Ruck's name was attached to helping a oil firm named Trafigura try and hush up the fact that Trafigura had dumped tons of toxic waste in the port at Abidjan in the Ivory Coast a few years earlier, and they had paid a settlement, and the whole thing was a big black eye for this oil company, and that Trafigura was trying through Carter Ruck to, push it under the rug. And so what you see here is how the term, the word Trafigura, exploded. The blue line here is if I remember correctly, the red is Carter Ruck, the blue is Trafigura, the yellow is The Guardian. Okay? People on Twitter are going, The Guardian can't talk about Trafigura, but we can. And they start pointing to the documents, and ultimately, within 24 hours, the Carter Ruck, the company behind the injunction, had to say, okay, fine, we give up. You can, you can ask your question in Parliament. This is TwitScoop during that period as the public became aware of this bit of censorship. And you can just see, I mean, this is really a time, I think this is less than a minute, how the words go from sort of being innocuous to being all about dumping, it's outrageous, Carter, Ruck, scandal, Trafigura. I mean, look, this was a great example of how social media, in real time, a community came together to force some topic out into the open. The last thing I want to show you, which in case Andy hasn't shown it to you, this is going to take a second to load. So this is what we did. Tech President and NPR and a bunch of other volunteers came together in 3 weeks. Okay, well, you can't really hear the sound, so I'm going to mute it. So we had this idea that with the election coming up, that it might be interesting to see if we could use Twitter and social media to aggregate people's voting day experience, and in particular help with election monitoring. There are a lot of people in the U.S. working on making sure the polls work, that they stay open long enough, that people, if they're supposed to be able to vote, that they get to vote. And so we thought, well, let's add our 2 cents to that effort. But no one else was doing anything with social media, and it was clear to us that simply if we could popularize the term vote report as a tag on Twitter, that we might actually get something back that would be useful. What this is a kind of fun mashup of how that information flowed through our servers, visually represented by where people were reporting from. They were giving us zip codes so we could figure out more or less where to place these reports. The green circles, those are people who are actually using iPhones to do audio reports. And if I had the mic on here, you could hear some of those. We have them playing on this applet. It's really fun, actually. The audio is the best. It's a tribute to radio.
Plug it in.
If you want, I mean, it's just people saying things like, "So I voted today, and there wasn't much of a line," and but you hear the emotion in their voices. The excitement of being involved in something, and what is lovely is we got about 12,000 individual reports. It's those audio reports that actually are the most evocative.
Yeah.
But those numbers are the most interesting data because those are people who included wait times at their polling place. And the goal here was to eventually get, to be able to zero in, to help journalists figure out in real time where there might be problems going on, as well as election monitors. And I know NPR used some of those reports, the LA Times used some, the New York Observer.
We'll have to do it later. Doesn't
Yeah,
seem
and like I said, it's pretty mundane stuff. But this to me is an example of what you can do. And by the way, we had no money. We just had a lot of really good volunteers, people with good connections, I'll admit. And we had Andy. But we were able to spread a good idea, and lots of people grabbed a hold of it and joined in. So that's my spiel, but I want to now just sort of close with one or two ideas about, and just sort of give you my fantasy. So most of what we've been talking about here is stuff that's happening as a side product of what people are doing with the web. And occasionally, like our electric sheep, or in the case of Vote Report, or the traffic unearthing, it's people consciously coming together to get something done. And so my question is there anything that a news organization that already has a mass listenership or a mass community that joins together, right? Every weekend, how many million people are tuned in at any given time? A couple million. What if in that moment, when people are plugged in, paying attention, they were also being offered a chance to see each other as a whole? Paul Simon has this phrase in one of his songs, "The way we look to us all." I think that's what we're inching towards here, is the ability to see how we look to us all. And then to do things with a community together, and you might say, well, that's not possible. Masses of people can't act in coordinated ways. Well, when was the last time you were at a baseball stadium and you watched people do the wave, right? Imagine if on a regular basis, people were invited while they're listening to the show to watch the show on their website. And I realize that this doesn't quite work because you're not a live show all the time. But imagine if there was some live component on the web where the listener community was invited to be more than listeners. And for starters, the first thing I would do is I would simply ask people, put yourself on the map. Pinpoint where you are, right? And then that way for this hour of time, we'll have a picture of who was listening. And maybe the next would be, and if you want to meet the other people or be able to connect to the people near you, we'll facilitate that. But what I have beyond that, because that's sort of the standard thing that people do, but what I have banging around in my head is, but what if we asked this mass of people who are no longer just listeners. Some of them are participating, a lot of them, the people who used to be called the audience, like Jay Rosen refers to them. What if we engage them in some way in co-creating something of meaning, right? How you feeling today? What's your mood? If your mood is up, why? If your mood is down, why? We suddenly have a barometer of a kind, and I'll state from the outset, typical NPR listener is not representative of everybody in the country. No one is claiming that anything like this is going to produce a perfect snapshot. It's just, can we create an image of ourselves? You can do this. No one else can do this other than a already existing entity that has a big audience. And most media organizations that I've interacted with over the years simply don't think of themselves this way. We do radio. We do really good quality radio. A friend of mine was the head of technology at Channel 13 in New York. And he once said to me, you know who has the biggest email list in New York City? Channel 13. But would Channel 13 ever do anything to connect its members to each other and in some way use the web? Heck, it's email, right? So that the Channel 13 community was something more than just a bunch of people on a list? Not really, because they think of themselves as public TV, not multimedia, right? And what I'm suggesting to you is that this thing, whatever we want to call it, the real-time web, coming, this sort of collective consciousness information that's continuing to evolve, this is coming. In one form or another, we're going to be relating to it, or in some cases, we're going to get addicted to it because it's a form of news and a form of giving us meaning. And so what I want to leave you with is a little bit of a challenge. Devar said, this is your retreat, your brainstorming. So, I'll go out on a limb and suggest that somebody's going to figure this out. Someone is going to figure out how to do the news live with the web, where the community is networked in, not just as listeners or viewers, but as participants. We got a few hints of this during the election when you'd see the debates happening, for example, and Twitter created a channel called elections.twitter.com. You can't get it now, they took it down. But for that period of time, if you wanted to see the real-time reactions of Twitter users to the election overall, and during the debates, the debate itself, well, we had that. The problem with their particular tool is that it didn't enable meaningful connection side to side. It was just a stream. And it's very hard to connect to people in that kind of a flow. But I'm suggesting that we are inventing better tools and better filters for beginning to act with purpose in this sort of conscious network. And so I think someone's going to come up with a way of doing this. And, I would rather it be, people who are serious about what this all means and in helping us understand what is going on in the world than, the sort of random two kids in a garage who...
Your brother.
Well, my brother would be fine. No, but really, a lot of the internet is about accidents. If you look at the people who have started and succeeded, MySpace was, some sort of rock promoters. And you can sort of tell how the site has kind of degraded. The people running it, I don't think, are very good, but it just happens to be big. Facebook is a bunch of college kids. Yeah, they went to Harvard, but they're not that smart. And yet Facebook is succeeding. It's now got a lock-in. And like it or not, we got to deal with it. And so I'm just leaving you with this thought. This kind of conscious news network, or community network, whatever you want to call it, is going to happen, and maybe it can get invented by people like you. Thank you.
Thank you.